bank manager exposed for mocking man, he'd discovered to be a hidden billion-dollar investor. Jake Turner stood at the entrance of Mitchell Bank, the cold autumn air biting at his cheeks, a mixture of determination and trepidation churning in his gut. As a mechanic respected in his small town, he'd always fixed cars, but today he needed to fix something bigger: the future of the youth center he loved. Yet, the moment he pushed open the heavy granite door, a wave of doubt washed over him. Tightening the straps of his worn coveralls, Jake strode toward the counter where Carl Mitchell stood. A smug smile stretched across his face. "What can I do for you today?" Carl sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. Jake swallowed hard, feeling the weight of judgment in Carl's eyes. The request was simple: a loan to renovate the youth center. "I want to help the kids in this community," he said, his voice steady though his heart raced. Carl's laughter echoed in the lobby, making Jake's cheeks flush. "You? A mechanic? What do you know about finances?" The harsh words hung in the air like daggers, piercing Jake's dignity. The glares from the other bank patrons felt like fire. Deflated, Jake turned away, his dream crumbling before him, tearing at his very spirit. That evening, under the dim light of a flickering lamp in his modest home, Jake confided in Mark, his retired veteran neighbor and trusted confidant. Mark's face hardened, a reflection of the town's resilience. "Don't let one man's arrogance crush your dreams, Jake. We'll gather the community. They'll stand with you." Hope flickered back to life. Together they rallied the townsfolk, igniting a passion in their hearts. As word spread, they began to meet in spirit and determination, neighbors sharing their stories of struggle and dreams unfulfilled. They painted a mural of resilience on the walls of the youth center, and with each brushstroke, they rebuilt a sense of community that had been neglected. A warmth spread amongst them, smiles replaced grimaces, and laughter echoed where silence once dwelt. "We're stronger together," they chorused, their voices stitching together the fabric of their aspirations. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." But as their movement gained momentum, a dark cloud loomed over Mitchell Bank. Rumors of financial trouble began to swirl, threatening the backbone of the community. The town's savings were at stake. Tension filled the air like an impending storm, and at the town meeting things took a turn. Jake sat with the townsfolk as Carl stepped up to the podium, his arrogance now muted by fear. But Jake made a bold move. He stepped in front, ready to testify about the youth center, when a slip of paper fell from his pocket, revealing an account statement, one filled with countless zeros. Gasps echoed through the room. Suddenly, Jake was no longer just a mechanic. He was a hidden billionaire. The shock on Carl's face spoke volumes. Could he ask for forgiveness? Could the community reconcile their judgments? The air thickened, heavy with tension, ready to break. In that moment, Jake stood at the edge of transformation, an opportunity for redemption in a time of reckoning. Would he rise to reclaim his dignity, or would he let the shame consume him? As whispers filled the room, the question lingered. What would happen next? Jake felt the weight of those shocked gazes on him, the disbelief mingling with something almost electric that crackled through the room. He clenched the paper in his hand, feeling the crinkle of the account statement pressing against his palm. This fact felt like a buoy that might help him rise above the flood of shame Carl had cast upon him. Yet would it drown him in new fears? Jake? The town mayor, Sarah, broke the reverberating silence first. Her voice wavered between incredulity and concern. Are you serious? He took a deep breath, steadying the quake in his heart. Yes. I never meant to hide it. I just wanted. Jake hesitated, the words tangled in his throat. I wanted our community to thrive, not just rely on my wealth. Carl cleared his throat, his bravado melting away, replaced by the vulnerability that only came with exposure. You could have told us. We could have worked together, he stumbled, the haughty facade from earlier crumbling as swiftly as the town's trust in him. Jake looked at him, no longer just the bank manager who had humiliated him, but a flawed man like the rest. The crowd buzzed, muttering among themselves, the revelation shaking the very roots of their understanding. Together? Jake shot back. Sense of injustice lashed within him. You were the first to mock me. This community deserves better than your scorn. The room fell silent again, all eyes glued on the two men. Could this moment truly shift the tide of their relationship? Mark, who had been watching diligently from the back, now made his way to Jake's side. What Jake is trying to say, he began, his voice steady, is that our future, the youth center, all of it means everything to us. He gestured towards the bustling crowd. We've been more than simple patrons of this bank. We need a champion. We need someone who believes in the community. The tide turned. Heads nodded. Someone shouted, "What's a bank without its people?" Others joined in, rallying behind Jake, fists pumping in the air, united by a common dream. Carl, a once intimidating figure, now looked dwarfed as he processed their shift. I will support you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, reminiscent of a child desperate for acceptance. The room hushed, half in disbelief. A conflict swirled within Jake. Could he forgive Carl? The man had wielded his position like a weapon, and now he was offering an olive branch. As much as he wanted to reject it, the eyes of the community filled with hope battled against his instincts. What does supporting us look like? Jake asked, carefully weighing his words. Carl straightened, pushing the uncertainty away, a glimmer of sincerity igniting in his eyes. I'll help you secure the funding you need. Let us work together. The air filled with a dual sense of anticipation and apprehension. The plan took shape, but so did the realization that sometimes, healing required facing uncomfortable truths. As they left the town hall, Mark turned to Jake. You know, there's always redemption for those willing to fight for it. Jake pondered this, a bittersweet mixture of hope and resolve swelling within him. What was he willing to forgive, and what would the cost be? The town transformed into something more than a community. It was the birthplace of dreams rekindled, a family fortified against the odds. Yet the shadows of the past still lingered as Jake wondered. Could he truly trust Carl? Or was this only the beginning of a fraught alliance? With that thought lingering in his mind, he knew one thing was certain. Their journey had just begun. The sun hung low as Jake stepped outside the town hall, casting long shadows on the pavement. The air felt different now, charged with a strange mix of hope and trepidation. He could hear the murmurs of the townsfolk around him, their excitement palpable. But beneath that excitement lay his own swirling doubts. What are you thinking? Mark asked, matching Jake's pace as they walked towards the park. The question hung heavy, an anchor, and Jake felt the weight of it. I'm just trying to figure out if this can actually work, Jake admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Can I trust Carl? Can I really work with the man who tried to undermine me? Mark nodded, understanding written all over his face. Trust takes time, Jake. Just remember, it's not all on you. You have the community backing you now. Jake clenched his jaw, grappling with the notion of needing support, something he had fiercely resisted for so long. The weight of leadership was still fresh on his shoulders, and he couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was looking to him for answers. Yet all he felt was uncertainty. As they reached the park, the laughter of children playing nearby wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. A small group had gathered, their eyes bright with anticipation, eager to hear about the proposed youth center. Let us tell them what's in store, Mark said, his voice radiating enthusiasm. Jake took a deep breath and stepped up onto a bench, elevating himself above the crowd. The familiar faces of his friends and neighbors beamed back at him, and for a moment he felt the warmth of acceptance wash over him. We've decided to take our dreams for the youth center to the next level, he announced, his voice steadying. Thanks to Carl's willingness to help, we can secure the funding we need to turn this dream into a reality. A ripple of applause broke out. People cheered, exchanging excited glances, and Jake felt his spirit lift. Yet that shadow of doubt still loomed over him. What if Carl didn't follow through? Would he face the wrath of the community once more? This time for raising their hopes? The next few days passed in a whirlwind of planning and meetings. Carl joined forces with Jake and Mark, each collaboration tinged with an air of careful negotiation. Men who had once been at odds began laying plans to chart a course for the town's future. Jake watched Carl carefully. He wanted to believe in the man's sincerity, Yet small moments where Carl's past arrogance peeked through reminded him how quickly trust could slip away. Remember Jake, Mark said during one meeting, forgiveness isn't just for him. It's for you too. Don't let resentment hold you back. Those words echoed in Jake's mind as he sat with Carl one afternoon. A bank of papers spread across the table between them. You really do care about this community, don't you? Jake asked, the question slipping out before he could reel it back in. Carl's gaze dropped to the papers. A hint of something, remorse or simply realization, flitted across his face. I've had a terrible way of showing it, he replied. His voice softer than Jake had ever heard it. But I want to change that. We can build something great together. Jake felt a spark of hope, a flicker that made him wonder if this partnership could be something more than a reluctant alliance. But just as he began to embrace that possibility, an unexpected phone call shattered the newfound peace. It was Sarah, the mayor, her voice breathless, tinged with urgency. You need to come to the office. We've got a serious issue regarding the funding proposal. Jake's heart sank. The past had a way of creeping back into the light, and this time it felt like a specter looming larger than before. What storm was brewing now? Would it threaten everything he had begun to build? As he raced towards the town hall, he couldn't shake a creeping sensation that this was only the beginning of a deeper confrontation, one that could unravel everything he'd worked for. Would they be able to weather this new storm? Or was the community's dream already on shaky ground? Jake burst through the doors of the town hall, his mind racing with possibilities. Sarah stood by her desk, her normally poised demeanor frayed with an urgency that made his gut twist. Jake, thank you for coming so quickly, she said, her brow furrowed. We need to talk about Carl's background. What do you mean? Jake asked, uneasiness creeping into his voice. Was this about the funding proposal? He could feel the weight of the community's expectations pushing down on him, as if the walls around him were tightening. While reviewing his records, I found something that doesn't add up. Sarah hesitated, glancing toward the busy office outside her window before continuing. Apparently, Carl's been hiding his financial history. He's linked to some questionable dealings. This could jeopardize our funding. Jake felt a chill wash over him. The flicker of hope he felt just days before felt like embers quickly doused by the cold water of reality. You're saying he's not trustworthy? On paper it looks bad, she replied, her voice a mixture of caution and concern. If we go forward with the proposal based on his involvement and something comes out, it will be us who look foolish. His hands clenched into fists. Just when things were starting to feel manageable, another wave hit. But what if his intentions are good now? What if he really wants to help? I understand that you believe in people's ability to change, Jake, Sarah said softly, but this isn't just about feelings. It's about facts we can't ignore. He swallowed hard, the tension building inside him as memories of past betrayals rose to the surface. Would he put the entire town's dream in jeopardy because of some past mistakes? His heart raced. Can we confront him? Jake's voice was steadier than he felt. Maybe this could still lead to clarity. We should give him a chance to explain. Sarah nodded, though her expression was wary. Be careful, Jake. Tread lightly. If you approach him wrong, he could turn this into a fight. Jake took a deep breath, gathering his resolve. Trust was delicate, and he knew he had to handle this situation with care. I'll do it, he said firmly, though a part of him trembled with uncertainty. The following day, he arranged to meet Carl at the cafe where they had shared their tentative plans for the youth center. The scent of coffee and baked goods filled the air, but there was a heaviness in Jake's chest that made it hard to breathe. As he took a seat, he could see Carl approaching, an air of confidence surrounding him. Hey Jake. Thanks for meeting, Carl said, the smile on his face betraying the seriousness looming over them. Sure, Carl, Jake replied, forcing a smile, but the weight of the moment sank deeper. I wanted to talk about something that's come up. Carl's brow furrowed slightly, the friendly demeanor replaced by a flicker of concern. Is everything okay? Jake hesitated, searching for his words. We have questions about your financial history. I think it's time we clear the air. The tension escalated around them like a brewing storm. Carl's expression hardened, his confidence now wavering. What are you talking about? Jake felt his heart rate spike. Sarah found some concerning ties to past dealings. If we're going to move forward, we need transparency. For a moment, silence hung between them. The cafe buzzed around them, but to Jake, it felt like they were in their own world. Carl's face flushed, his breath quickening. You don't understand that that's not who I am anymore. Jake's pulse quickened. Then prove it. We can't afford any surprises. As Carl leaned back slightly, a flicker of irritation sparked in his eyes, but then it softened again. Okay, let us talk it through. I'll share everything. Jake's resolve felt somewhat fortified, but doubt gnawed at him. Was this a willing partnership or merely an act? The conversation unfolded like a delicate dance, each man trying to maintain his ground, yet seeking to understand one another. But even as they spoke, a warning bell rang in his mind. Trust once given could be so easily taken away. As he looked into Carl's eyes, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the edge of something monumental. What else would this journey reveal? And could they truly build the future together? Or was Jake blind to the truth standing right in front of him? The cafe buzzed with chatter, the clinking of mugs punctuating Jake's rising anxiety. He leaned in closer to Carl, trying to read the man sitting across from him, hoping to find some glimmer of honesty buried under a layer of tension. Look, Jake, Carl said, his voice firm yet tinged with vulnerability. I've made mistakes, but I'm not that person anymore. I want to help this town, I really do. If you give me just a chance to show you. Jake interrupted, feeling the weight of his own conviction. I want to believe you, Carl, but this isn't just about you anymore. This is about everyone, the kids, the dreams we had. We can't let personal agendas derail what we all need. Carl nodded slowly, his eyes clouded with the ghost of regrets. I had a rough past, sure, but I've been working to turn it around. You need to know that everything I do now, it's for something bigger. He leaned back, crossing his arms, a defensive posture creeping in. And yet, those past dealings are still lingering like a shadow over us. You have to help yourself first before you can help anyone else, Jake pressed, desperate for clarity. What specifically are we talking about? A flicker of anger crossed Carl's face, a storm brewing in his eyes. It's the nature of business, Jake. Sometimes you work with people you don't want to be associated with to get ahead. But I cut those ties. I thought we agreed to focus on the community. We did, but without full transparency, we're stuck living in a haze of uncertainty. Jake's frustration mounted. If something from your past comes out while we're trying to move forward, everything we've built could collapse. Carl stared at him, calculating, and for a moment, Jake felt the cafe's warm atmosphere turn icy. The urgency in his veins intensified. I'm giving you this chance, Carl. Show me what you can really do. Can you give me those records? Let us lay everything bare. The words hung heavily in the air. A challenge that both men understood could tip the scales either way. Carl's mouth opened slightly as if he wanted to argue, then clamped shut, his features tightening. Fine. I'll get the records, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Jake released a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. Thank you. Look, I'm not against you. I want to believe in this vision we have. I just need to know that we won't be blindsided. As the conversation wound down, Carl shifted in his seat, the confidence he had arrived with fading like the sunlight filtering through the cafe window. Jake felt a pang of sympathy tugging at his heartstrings. They were both fighting for something different battles, yet entwined by the same cause. When they stood to leave, Jake clapped Carl on the shoulder. Let us regroup in a couple of days. I'll be waiting. We have a community to build. Outside, the crisp air wrapped around Jake like a revitalizing embrace, although inside he still felt the remnants of uncertainty swirling. What kind of past could Carl possibly reveal? And what if it shattered the fragile hope Jake was holding on to? Not far from the cafe, a group of kids raced by, laughter soaring through the air. Jake stopped for a moment watching them. The bright eyes and infectious joy were a powerful reminder of why all of this mattered. Days drifted by, notes exchanged, and tension mounted. But would Carl's records be enough to quell the doubts, or would they expose a darker reality? As Jake prepped for another meeting, the phone rang, shattering his thoughts. A deep voice on the other end made his heart race. Jake, you need to know something crucial about Carl. It's bigger than you realize. What was happening? Jake felt the ground shift beneath him. Suddenly, he was not just fighting for a project, but digging into a tangled web he had barely begun to unravel. What shocking truths were hidden, waiting to come to light? The phone call hung in the air like a dark cloud, thick with tension. Jake's heart raced, pounding against his ribcage as the voice on the line continued, unfurling the story like a twisted vine. Listen, Jake. Carl's not who he claims to be. You need to dig deeper. His past is more tangled than you think. Trust me. Each word sliced through Jake's mind, leaving jagged edges of doubt. He could feel his resolve weakening, like the ground beneath him was shifting and buckling. He clenched the phone tighter, unable to shake the icy feeling creeping up his spine. What do you mean? What have you found? He demanded, desperate for clarity. There was a pause, heavy and unsettling. I can't get into details now, but I have connections. People who know what's really going on. Just be careful, okay? Carl's not the only one with a past. There are others involved. The call ended abruptly, leaving Jake fumbling in silence. The cafe, with its warmth and community chatter, felt like a distant memory. All of that hope now teetered on an uneasy precipice. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to gather his thoughts. What if Carl wasn't just bent on fixing the town but was instead a puppet master in a bigger game? Had he been naive to believe in a vision carved out of broken dreams? Questions looped endlessly in Jake's mind as he tried to project strength, but doubt was wrapping around him like an insistent vine. He grabbed a pen and paper, jotting down reminders, questions for Carl, points to query, and any potential connections he had heard whispered about in the past few days. He knew he had to tread lightly. The stakes were higher than ever, and the truth, twisted as it might be, had to be unearthed. By the time Jake made it to the community center for the next meeting, a flurry of thoughts spun like a carousel in his head. The chatter of residents filled the space, their laughter clashing with his thoughts. People were counting on him, and he couldn't let them down. As Carl entered, the room quieted slightly, anticipation filling the air like static electricity. Jake's heart raced as he met Carl's gaze. There was something fragile in Carl's eyes, something that spoke of a man wrestling with his own demons. Jake needed to remember that whatever personal battles Carl faced, they could not cloud the judgment necessary to protect everyone else. Carl, Jake started, trying to keep his voice steady. We need to talk about transparency. I received some troubling tips about your past. There, he had said it. The air felt charged with challenge. Carl's brow furrowed, and for a moment, a flicker of panic crossed his face before he schooled it into guardedness. What tips? Jake leaned forward, feeling emboldened. Things about your dealings, partnerships that might not align with what you're claiming. I need you to be honest with me. The color drained from Carl's face as ripples of surprise flickered through the gathered crowd. Whispers began to fill the room, spreading like wildfire among the residents. Jake, we can sort this out. Carl started, but his voice was trembling slightly. No, Jake interjected sharply, adrenaline flooding through him. We need to sort it out now. You've put this town at risk before, we can't let it happen again. The tension was palpable. The audience watched, breath held, as the stakes rose, balanced on a knife's edge. Jake felt every eye burn into him and Carl, hoping for answers but sensing an even deeper undercurrent swirling around them. Just as Jake thought he might finally get a decision, Carl straightened, his expression hardening. You don't know everything, Jake. There are things I've been keeping from you for a reason. If you're looking for dirty secrets, you might want to consider who you're really talking to. Jake's stomach dropped at the threat veiled in Carl's words. Suddenly, everything became more complicated. What was Carl hiding? And who else was involved? Before Jake could respond, the room's door swung open, and in walked a figure cloaked in a heavy trench coat. The crowd parted, eyes widening, as a strange tension seeped into the already fraught atmosphere. Something's about to go down, Jake breathed, instinctively sensing the shift. And I'm not sure we're ready for it. What secret would this newcomer unravel, and how would it change everything? Jake took a deep breath, facing a storm growing stronger as the meeting spiraled into uncharted territory. The figure stepped into the light, and Jake shifted nervously, his instincts screaming to analyze each movement. The newcomer's face was obscured by the brim of a wide-brimmed hat, casting shadows that deepened the mystery. Jake's heart pounded louder with every moment that passed. Who are you? The simplicity of his question echoed in the charged room, slicing through the warring energies of silence and confusion. The man paused, assessing the crowd, then focused on Jake. Someone who knows more than you think, he replied, his voice gravelly yet steady. I've come to shed light on Carl's shadow. You're not the only one curious about his past. The name hung heavily in the air. A few gasps rippled through the crowd, eyes darting from the stranger to Carl, who appeared now like a cornered animal, pools of sweat beating at his temples. Jake's mind buzzed with growing urgency. What do you mean? What do you know? The stranger took a step forward, pushing back the brim of his hat just enough for their eyes to meet. Jake thought he recognized that gaze. It was full of a mixture of knowing and something darker, perhaps regret. I've seen the documents, Jake. The ones Carl tried to bury. Connections that go straight to you and the people of this town. What documents? Jake asked, his voice wavering between demand and hope. Contracts. Investors who wanted to revitalize this place, but they slipped through Carl's fingers willingly or not. I can't say, the man replied, folding his arms. But an opportunity won't stay buried forever. And if Carl has his way, those documents could upend everything you think you know about him. The entire room shifted as whispers escalated into a crescendo of speculation. Jake could feel the eyes of the townsfolk weighing heavily upon him, each a silent question mark questioning his leadership. Enough games, Carl shouted, his voice rising with an edge of desperation cutting through the crowd. This is nonsense. You don't know anything about me or this town. Oh, but I do, the stranger said, his tone calm yet unyielding. You've worked tirelessly to create an image. But every man has a history, a past. What happens when those shadows come to light? Are you ready for that? Carl took a step back, the defiance slowly fading from his posture. The tension twisted into something raw and palpable, something dangerous. Jake felt the weight of the moment bearing down on him. This was not just a meeting anymore, it was a reckoning. What is this really about? Jake pressed, frustration edging into his voice. Are we just supposed to stand here and let this unravel without any answers? Before the stranger could respond, Carl interrupted, his facade breaking just enough to reveal a glimmer of fear. You have no idea what you're up against, Jake. His words hung in the air, thick with warning. Jake stood fixed in place, adrenaline racing through him. A swirl of emotions threatened to pull him under. Hope, fear, determination. He wanted to protect his community. But now he was standing at the brink of something much larger than he envisioned. Enough of this. The stranger's voice cut through the noise like a knife. You need to know. There's a bigger game at play here. Carl isn't the only player. If you want the truth, follow the money. He pointed a finger toward Carl, the accusation like a shot fired. The crowd gasped, a wave of disbelief washing over them. Jake felt the ground beneath him start to shift again. Doubts creeping back, in this time they felt heavier. Could he trust this newcomer? And if so, what would it mean for Carl? As the meeting spiraled out of control, Jake felt a profound urgency to uncover the truth. But did he have the strength to face it? He looked back at Carl, who stood rigid, eyes blazing but that unmistakable hint of vulnerability lurking beneath the surface. Carl, Jake called out, his voice steadying. If this is as serious as it sounds, then we need to come clean. Together. The weight of the moment hung heavily over them. Yet Jake knew that to move forward, they needed to decide, could they really untangle the lies that had woven their lives together? The walls felt like they were closing in. Secrets wanted to break free. Then a sharp noise cut through the tension, a low rumble that made the floor shake. The lights flickered and Jake's heart dropped. What was that? He whispered, eyes wide with dread, realizing that something was brewing outside. And whatever it was, it threatened to expose them all. Just as they turned toward the door, ready to confront the unknown, another voice emerged from the shadows, a voice that could break everything apart. Could Jake uncover the truths behind both Carl and the new arrival? And what aftershocks awaited them all in the chaos to come? Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he stood at the center of the chaos. The earlier whispers had transformed into a frenzied buzz, and he felt the weight of every gaze on him. Lights flickered overhead like a strobe light caught in a whirlwind, heightening the already tense atmosphere. Did you feel that? Someone murmured from the crowd, and Jake turned just in time to see Carl's face drain of color. This isn't the time for jokes. Carl spat, his voice rising in a mix of panic and irritation. There it was again, the pulse of urgency, the primal fear that begged for answers. The stranger stepped forward, his presence commanding. What you just felt isn't just earth shifting beneath your feet. It's the very foundation of this town teetering. It's about to come crashing down if we don't confront what's hiding in the shadows. The crowd fell silent, turning its attention to Carl, awaiting a response. But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping through his fingers. Every passing second brought with it the potential for the truth to unravel in ways he couldn't anticipate. Jake, Carl finally stammered, his voice a knot of disbelief. You're not seriously entertaining this nonsense, are you? People are scared, Carl, Jake replied, his voice firm but steady. They have a right to know what's really happening. What's been happening? He felt the weight of the stranger's gaze on him, urging him to keep pressing on. And you think this is going to help? Carl shot back, his eyes glinting with something that felt more like desperation than anger. All this will do is rip us apart. Or it could bring us together, Jake countered, his resolve hardening. As he spoke, it was as if the walls of the room closed in, and a breath of fresh air pushed past him, igniting the flickering hope he wasn't sure he had left. The stranger moved closer, lowering his voice. Look, you're at war with your own mind, Carl. This isn't just about you anymore. It's bigger than all of us. We could change things if you would just be honest. Carl shifted, clearly struggling with the weight of those words. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his features, revealing a vulnerability Jake had never witnessed before. What if I tell you things you wouldn't believe? Things that would shatter this town even more than you think? Then it's our job to face that, Jake shot back, determination lacing his voice. It's our responsibility to face the truth, no matter how hard it may be. Suddenly, a louder rumble echoed from outside, shaking the very foundation of the building. The crowd gasped collectively. Fear darted across faces and Jake's instinct kicked in again. We need to get to the bottom of this. Now. As he motioned toward the door, the stranger halted him, eyes narrowing. Not yet. There's still something you all need to understand. Jake felt the tension in the air shift, like a coiled spring ready to snap. What is it? Your connections to those contracts. They mean someone is watching you. Right now. Another loud crack of thunder resonated outside, more intense this time, as though the earth itself was warning them of the looming storm. Inflections of fear washed over the crowd again, but Jake felt a fire ignite within him. This wasn't just about Carl anymore. This was about the town and everything they stood for. Jake, Carl said, voice trembling, you don't know what you're asking for. Could ruin everything. Then let us find out what's waiting for us. Jake turned, eyes locking with the stranger, whose knowing yet uncertain gaze sent a shiver down his spine. The air thickened with uncertainty, but Jake knew deep down there was no other path. They had to dig deep into the truth, no matter the casualty or fallout. Just then the door burst open and a figure appeared, breathless, eyes wide with urgency. You all need to get out. Now. As shock rippled through the crowd, Jake felt the moment crystallize around him. This wasn't the ending, this was just the beginning. What lay ahead in the tempest outside, and what secrets would be unveiled amidst the gathering chaos? With each heartbeat the stakes only grew higher. Jake's instincts kicked in. The urgency in the newcomer's voice sliced through the rising panic. What is happening? Why now? He demanded, stepping closer as the crowd shifted uneasily, glancing anxiously at one another. They're coming, the newcomer gasped, trying to catch his breath. I saw them just outside, black SUVs and men in suits. They weren't here for a nice chat. I promise you that. The air crackled with tension, and Jake's heart raced. He turned to Carl, whose face had turned an unusual shade of pale. What do we do? Carl murmured, half to himself and half to Jake. Stick together, Jake urged, his voice steadying as he tried to project confidence, even as his own doubts simmered beneath the surface. We have to figure this out now, or we'll never get the chance. The stranger who had spoken earlier stepped forward, his eyes darting toward the door. Listen, he said urgently, the truth is volatile. You thought you felt earthquakes? Well, trust me, the real quake is coming from the lies that have buried this town long enough. We need to move and find a safe place to talk. The crowd began to jostle, fearful murmurs bubbling up as each face reflected uncertainty and fear. Just as Jake opened his mouth to rally them, another tremendous crack of thunder rolled through the sky, and the lights flickered violently overhead. The mood shifted. An invisible weight pressed down as dread settled within the room. Okay. Let us go. Jake shouted, trying to contain the rising tide of panic. Out the back. Move. He began pushing through the crowd, urging people toward the exit, feeling their fear bleed into him. One by one they started to shuffle, shoving past each other, the little room suddenly feeling too small, too confining. Who are these men? Carl asked, his voice higher now, laced with desperation. What do they want? Probably us, Jake replied, gritting his teeth. Let us move. We can't let them catch us here. As they poured out into the alleyway, the wind howled around them, carrying an ominous chill. The air felt charged like a pulse, with something waiting to break free. The dark sky loomed above, heavy with clouds that seemed to mirror the chaos brewing in their hearts. Jake and the first few others bolted down the street, shadows flickering behind them. He glanced back to see the stranger keeping pace. What do you know? Jake called out, urgency driving his words. What do they want with us? The stranger met his gaze, the storm reflecting in his eyes. They know what we uncovered. They know about the contracts and they're desperate to silence us before we can spread the truth. As they turned a corner, Jake's breath quickened. The street was empty, but he could feel eyes on them, as if the very buildings were watching, waiting. He could hardly believe this was happening. All of it felt unreal, like a bad dream that had suddenly turned terrifyingly vivid. But amidst the adrenaline coursing through his veins, something else simmered within him: determination. He couldn't allow fear to dictate their fate. They reached a small parking lot behind a diner. But as they slowed, another loud honk froze them. A sleek black SUV rounded the corner, tires screeching. Light pooled around it, illuminating the faces of men in suits, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. Get down, Jake shouted, pushing Carl and others against the wall. Fear gripped him, but there was a glimmer of something else too, a flicker of clarity. This was the moment to take a stand. They couldn't run forever. Jake turned to the group, hearts beating wildly. We need to confront them. Now or never. What secrets did the men in suits bring? And could facing them truly illuminate the darkness that loomed over their lives? The storm was gathering strength, and so was Jake's resolve. Jake's heart hammered in his chest as the SUV screeched to a halt. Shadows loomed from within, menacing and imposing. He glanced at Carl, whose face was taut with fear, and at the gathered townsfolk, their eyes wide with dread. This was it, their moment of truth or disaster sprawled out like a road, forked unpredictably ahead. Stay close, Jake commanded, stepping forward, instinct overriding fear. He felt a rush of adrenaline seep through him, fueled by the need to protect his community. The murmur of wind swirled around them, and the tension in the air thickened, like the calm just before a storm. The door to the SUV swung open, and a tall figure stepped out, an aura of authority surrounding him. The man wore an immaculate suit, eyes cold and calculating, scanning the crowd with a hawkish intensity. Who's in charge here? He barked, voice laced with impatience. Jake felt the eyes of the town upon him, heavy with expectation. I am, he replied, feeling the weight of that declaration wash over him. And you are? Detective Miles, the man replied, his tone hard. I'm looking for Carl Mitchell. We need to have a conversation. Jake's stomach dropped. What do you want with him? He demanded, anger rising. It's not your business, the detective snapped, eyes narrowing. But let us just say things have escalated. There are serious implications to his past connections regarding the funds for this town. Those connections are part of what we're trying to fix. Jake shot back. We're working to build something better. Whatever drama you've got with Carl, it doesn't involve us. Wrong, Detective Miles countered, voice slicing through the air. This town is embroiled in a scheme that could sink it deeper than it already is. We have reason to believe that whatever you've been digging into has attracted the wrong kind of attention. It's time for the truth to come out. Jake felt the weight of those words settle in, spiraling doubt beginning to unfurl inside him. What truth? Are you implying he's still involved in those dealings? Is that why you're here? Confrontation isn't just something you tackle on your own, Jake, the detective continued. This is bigger than you both. Carl shifted nervously beside him, shaking his head. I'm not involved in anything illegal now, he shouted, voice trembling slightly. I've worked hard to turn my life around. You have to believe me. Believe what you want, Miles said with an air of disinterest. But we've reviewed the documentation tied to the youth center. This is about more than just a dream. There are real criminals eager to silence anyone threatening the status quo. As Jake met Miles's gaze, he felt the air shift, something in the detective's demeanor indicating deeper trouble. If you're here for Carl, then you need to know that the community stands with him. We're in this together. Whatever mistakes he has made, we won't abandon him now, Jake declared, grounding his voice in purpose. Nice sentiment, Miles replied, but the harsh reality is that loyalties may shift when it comes to saving your necks. What does that mean? Jake asked, feeling the tension ratchet higher. This was no longer just about the youth center. The stakes were ballooning into something frightening. It means if you want to protect these people, you need to understand who's pulling the strings. If you really think working together with him can save this town, you've already lost sight of the battlefield, Miles shot back coldly. Just then the stranger stepped forward, voice steady. Detective, if there's something dangerous unfolding, then tell us. We deserve to know what put us on the radar and how to fight it. Jake watched the stranger take that step, sensing the hope seeping into the moment like sunlight through clouds. Were they actually willing to stand against whatever storm was brewing? Could truth really be the weapon they needed? Fine, Detective, Miles said, annoyance creeping into his expression. You want the truth? Then here it is. There are parties interested in buying out this town, a hostile takeover. People in power don't like losing control, especially not over a situation that involves an investor with Carl's history. You're all at risk. Gasps rippled through the crowd, fear morphing into indignation as glances shot around. Then we need to protect our community, Jake insisted, the fire rekindling in his heart. What do we need to do? Start by understanding how deep this runs, Miles warned. There are players that won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to bury you, Carl included, to maintain their stronghold. And what if he has changed? Jake interrupted, voice strong but desperation mingling with doubt. What if he truly wants to help? The past knows how to claw its way back, Miles countered, his eyes piercing. Trust only the facts. In that moment Jake felt everything align. The community stood strong behind him, their faith unraveling a strength he hadn't realized existed until now. It wasn't just about one person's redemption. It was about rallying a town, their home. Then we uncover those facts, he declared, resolution surging. We work together to expose the truth. Community means showing up for each other and confronting the past together. Let us take our stand and fight. And as heads nodded in silent agreement, Jake took a breath that felt lighter, like the storm clouds of uncertainty began to part. A flicker of hope ignited in his chest. The storm was not just coming. It had already arrived and they were ready to face it. Let us gather everyone, Jake began, met by the unwavering eyes of the townsfolk. This isn't just about us anymore, but for each other. The kids, the dreams, and our future, we must reclaim it. With determination they would fight together, united against whatever lurked in the shadows of their past. This was their town. They would not give it up without a fight. And so they would rise, forging a community anew, knowing that sometimes the truth is simply the first step toward healing, towards redemption, towards hope. In this moment, Jake understood that trust might be fragile, but when ignited by courage, it could be the flame that illuminated the darkest moments. And they would stand strong as allies, ready to uncover every truth. Now, as the wind howled and the storm raged, they were prepared to face whatever continued to chase them. Together they would emerge stronger. Subscribe immediately to the channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will inspire you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment below with your reactions to this ending, and how it made you feel. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is your chance to make a difference. Don't wait. Not even one more second.